Okay, thank you very much. So now we have some time for questions. If you have a question, could you please say your name and your outlet? Yes, please.
My name is Foggo, correspondent of the Bulgarian Club Z Media. How far from the Russian border the maneuvers will take place? That's the first question. And second question, so according to the scenario, NATO will repel attack from north. Does it mean that this attack, this imaginary attack, will come from Russia? Thank you.
How far from the Russian border? Well, NATO, Norway has a border with Russia, and we are operating in Norway, and we are operating in the high north as far as Tromsø and Alta. And I'll let General Jakobsen comment on that or add to that if he desires. This message, or this exercise, has several messages. That is that NATO is capable of defending, it is capable of deterring any adversary, not any one particular adversary, in the conduct of its operations throughout the theater of the alliance. And that is what we intend to do. So I wouldn't comment on any particular country. This is a message to anyone who might conduct any kind of aggressive act leading to an Article 5 scenario inside the NATO alliance. Rune, did you want to comment?
Yeah, the core exercise area is more than 1,000 kilometers from the Russian border. and air operations could take place up to 500 kilometers away from the border. So there should not be any reason for the Russians to get scared or see this as something else than a defensive exercise. And the 6 brigades training, they train both offensive and defensive operations. So the scenario is designed to make the units on battalion and brigade level training outcomes. Thank you.
Yes, please.
German contribution on the exercise, and second, I'd like to have some personal views of your dedication to the transatlantic security environment and your personal dedication to NATO.
Absolutely. Ich bin ein Mönchengladbacher. I was born in Mönchengladbach in NATO Northern Army Headquarters at Rheindalen in 1959. So you might say I was born into NATO. This is my 5th assignment in Europe. My 4th command in NATO, if you include the JTF that I commanded during Unified Protector in the transition from Odyssey Dawn. I am a firm transatlanticist. I've been educated in Europe at Sciences Po Strasbourg, the heart of the European community, and that's the reason I think I'm here in this job. It's a dream job for me, and every day I wake up and pinch myself knowing that I'm a NATO commander in Naples and I'm able to get underway and go to sea with a force of over 45,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to defend the interests of this alliance that I believe so strongly in. As to the German contribution, I'm pleased to say that when I was in Berlin earlier last month, I had a chance to visit General Zorn, the German Chad, and compliment and congratulate him on the contribution of 8,500 personnel and their associated kit, if you will, the equipment that they're bringing to Norway. Germany is part of the German-Netherlands Corps, headed by Lieutenant General van der Laan, who happens to be a Dutchman, a very professional soldier, and they are part and parcel of the 5,000-plus man spearhead force that I told you about, the very high readiness joint task force, which shows that NATO can move quickly. Part of a discussion during the summit earlier this year in July was a tabled proposition to be able to do the 30-30-30-30 plan. So that was to move 30 battalions, 30 aircraft squadrons, or 30 ships in 30 days. And some nations can do that better than others. The alliance aspires to be able to do that extremely well, and we're demonstrating that with the heavy logistics capability that will be demonstrated in this exercise. I think I've said it before, logistics is the 6th domain of warfare, and you're going to see that play out through Trident Juncture. thank you for your question.
If I may add to that, the Admiral mentioned the contribution of Germany. From a land perspective, they're going to provide a brigade, a very robust brigade, that will be part of what we call the primary training audience, because the live portion of Trident Juncture 18 is focused at the brigade level. So they have an extremely important role from a land perspective to play.
Okay, we have a question over here. Yes, please.
Dan Michaels, Wall Street Journal.
Hey, Dan.
Can you talk a little bit more about the challenge of just getting all the equipment to Norway? Because logistics and military mobility is a very big issue in Europe. The European Union is working with NATO on this. How does this play into all of that?
Sure.
Thank you.
When you're talking about moving over 45,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, over 60 ships, large ships, 120 aircraft, and 10,000 rolling or tracked vehicles to respond to a crisis, that is no small feat. It has to be done through sea lift, airlift, or by the land. United Kingdom has chosen to drive a preponderance of its force on the land, so they're testing their ability to do that through land lines of communication. We have plenty of forces, lots of U.S. forces, lots of U.S. Marines coming from the United States that will be exercising our ability to operate in sea lines of communication. So, part of the victory of all this is that everybody shows up on day one, on the 25th of October, with their associated support and ready to defend. And so that's why I say logistics is the sixth domain of warfare. We're testing that. It's not going to be perfect. We have about 10% of the personnel and the equipment on the ground right now. So we've got a heavy lift over the next 18 days to get the rest of those folks there and ready to defend. And it was designed that way because that's kind of the way we would approach a crisis. Something happens, we've got to respond. In the United States, we call that TIPFID, Time Phase Force Deployment Doctrine. And NATO is working this through LOGFAS. It's logistics program for delivery of equipment with all of these various means of delivery from the sea and from the air and from the land. And there will be some significant lessons learned out of this. And we don't expect it to go perfectly. That's why we do exercises. So thanks for your question, Christian.
Yeah, just maybe a couple of points. The first one is the tactical mobility, especially again from a land perspective. The road network in Norway is oriented as two major highways, basically going up north, south, the principal axis. So when we talk about over 10,000 vehicles on these roads, that will present a traffic control challenge that will stress test the system. The second point I want to make is the weather in Norway in late October, early November will play a factor for sure. As a Canadian, I know what it can look like in a northern country during that time of the year. They already had some snow in Norway, so that will certainly be stressing the movement control and our logistics as well.
Brooks.
A little higher, yeah. Yes, Brooks Tigner, Jane's Defense. I just wanted to build on Dan's question about military mobility. Two quick questions. How much of the NRF is going to be deployed? And I assume it's the entire spearhead that will be deployed. If not, could you tell us what percentages of both of those are at play? And is the way that the NRF going to be deployed in Norway designed specifically to test military mobility, or are you relying on air transport as in the past for it and the spearhead? Thank you.
Christian.
The whole of NRF will be deployed. It's a brigade part of the German Netherlands Brigade. It will deploy from Europe. They will finish an exercise, get on ships, aircraft, and fly in theater like it would happen during a conflict.
So no land elements, no overland?
No, no, not from that element,
For
no.
the NRF and the spear, you're including the spearhead inside the NRF?
Yeah, yes, yes,
okay.
yes.
But is that how it would always be in a war case situation?
Well, depends where you're going, right? So Norway, there's very few countries that can drive to Norway. Excuse me. I know the United Kingdom will deploy a significant element over land. So they're going to sail to the north of Europe. They're going to drive all the way to Denmark, and then they're going to sail to Norway just to test that military mobility that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just wondering if you shouldn't be testing more overland, testing more of the movement of the NRF overland in case in future Trident Juncture was held strictly in Eastern Europe with no sea access.
Well, there's other exercises that are testing that, actually. The Noble Jump exercise that we conducted last summer, not this past summer, but 2017, we had troops moving from Greece all the way to Romania overland.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ansgar?
From the German press agency. I have a question in the same direction. A lot of experts are wondering if NATO is really capable to deploy troops very quickly. Wouldn't it make sense to do also so-called snap exercises like Russia? What do you think about it?
I'd like to get some training value out of an exercise. And whereas a SnapX will tell you something about your readiness and your ability to respond on very short notice, I think that through a deliberate plan and over the course of time, we have an opportunity to look at different scenarios throughout the European theater and then apply the full force and capability of NATO. There's probably better learning, better training, and better lessons learned that come out of it, particularly with regard to monitors and assessors. So there's a lot that comes to bear to do an exercise the volume of which Trident Juncture has become. And so I think that deliberate approach is going to allow us to take lessons learned away from this to refine and improve our training tactics and procedures in the future, more so than a SnapX would do. And Rune, do you have a comment on that?
No, I agree totally, sir.
I can partly answer your question or concern. The VJTF, Very High Readiness Task Force, part of their annual training plan, there's an alert exercise that is taking place. So we do that, we bring the folks in, bring the vehicles in. We don't necessarily deploy them right away, but at least part of that readiness is tested that way.
Okay. Anna, please.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more if there's going to be any kind of training or putting into test any kind of cyber capabilities, and also maybe against APV2, like anti-denial in the exercise? Thank you.
I wouldn't talk about offensive cyber capabilities. I wouldn't talk particularly about specific operational aspects of the exercise, but I would tell you that we intend to defend our networks against anyone that might have any kind of ulterior motives while we're in the conduct of the exercise. And I believe they are very robust. So we'll get a chance to test that.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Admiral, Generals. Thank you for your time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.